been almost 2 years since wildfires tore through Oregon, burning thousands of homes. Many families have been waiting since then to rebuild. And with inflation and a housing crisis, they're now going to have to wait even longer.
Insurance doesn't cover everything, and all the materials have gone sky high as far as the price of them.
Plus, attacks against Asian Americans increased across the country during the COVID-19 pandemic, and one of those bias crimes just happened to a father and daughter in Portland this past weekend.
This is a very horrible experience for us. With kids released, we believe a lot of Japanese or other Asians will be injured.
Here's the story. I'm Pat Doris. Welcome to The Story. All the ways to communicate with us right there at the bottom of your screen. You can email us. The address is thestory@kgw.com, or you could use the hashtag TheStoryKGW on Twitter, or you could leave us a voicemail. Just call our phone number, 503-226-5090. Two summers ago, more than 4,000 homes burned in Oregon, along with 1 million acres of land. Everyone knew recovery would take time, but few expected it would take this long. Many are still in temporary housing, fighting red tape and a slow-moving bureaucracy. And now inflation is making everything more expensive. Christine Pitawanich checked in with some of those trying to rebuild.
We're on a river, and it's the little North Fork River of the Santiam, and I really enjoy living there.
These images were taken of Lucretia Benolkin's property in the Santiam Canyon before the wildfire in September of 2020.
We're on the workshop here.
And these are photos taken after the fire moved through. Benolkin's home was leveled, everything gone.
It was pretty scary, realizing that I had nothing left but the clothes on my back and my medicine. Had that with me, and that was it.
Benolkin, who is 89, is living independently in one of her daughter's second home in Arizona as she waits for her new home to be rebuilt. But it's taking a while.
Insurance doesn't cover everything, and all the materials have gone sky high as far as the price.
She is one of many people still displaced.
Given that we were already in a housing crisis and what has happened with construction cost escalation, that really drove us to spending every dollar that we could justify on housing. My name is Alex Campbell. I am the External Affairs Officer for the Disaster Recovery and Resilience section of the Oregon Housing and Community Services Agency.
Oregon Housing and Community Services is the state agency responsible for distributing $422 million of wildfire disaster recovery money from the federal government. The program doing that is called ReOregon.
We dedicated over $300 million of that for 122 housing programs. The majority of that for folks who lost a home and we would replace a home.
We're talking affordable housing geared toward home ownership for both prior homeowners and those who rented before and want to buy. Campbell anticipates wildfire survivors will be able to apply late this year or early next year.
But generally speaking, complete new homes are not going to be available prior to probably towards the end of next summer.
Over in the McKenzie River Valley, east of Eugene,
housing is probably our biggest issue right now.
Jamie Savage works for Cascade Relief, a nonprofit helping with wildfire recovery.
Right now, my main concern is the 150 families that are on their property, living in an RV, some with 2, 3, 4, 5 kids that are trying to figure out, what their rebuild is going to look like and how they're going to do it and what the time frame is they're going to be able to do it in.
She says while the $422 million in federal money will help those with the least resources, she's worried about all the people who were underinsured.
It's the people that are in the middle that are, good employment and, solid income and solid credit history. Those are the people that are having the most difficult time right now.
We are required by the federal government to spend 70% of the total grant to benefit what they call low and moderate income individuals.
In Marion County, Commissioner Danielle Bethel says about 300 families still don't have a place to call home. She says there are big plans for more rental units, but it's slow going.
The county is still working on 2 projects, temporary housing projects, which are tiny homes, 16 units in Gates at the old Gates Motel site and 16 units at North Santiam State Park. Both of those projects are taking much longer than anticipated.
She says the Gates project will likely be complete in early winter of this year. The project at North Santiam State Park will take longer to open, maybe next spring. It's under environmental review right now.
The LIFT project, which is in Mill City, that's 54 units of affordable multifamily housing. They are moving ahead, but that's a pretty slow process.
Bethel says among the hurdles for developers there is that the Mill City sewer system lacks capacity. The system needs improvements, and the hope is that groundbreaking can happen next year. Additionally, Bethel says with help from Oregon Housing and Community Services, the county has bought 14 acres of land in Mill City to develop more affordable housing. That's part of the more than $73 million Oregon Housing and Community Services recently gave out to fund over 600 affordable homes. That is separate from the federal grant.
I love the river. I love the people.
Meantime, Benolkin is hopeful she'll be able to move back into her new home this summer. She recently got some grant money from a local organization, and while it doesn't cover all the costs, she's grateful for the support she has.
Thankful for the people and the friends that I have that have been so very helpful and thoughtful.
Christine Pitawanich joins us now. You've been covering this for 2 years. I think that makes you an expert. As you've checked in with these folks over time, what's this been like for them?
I mean, it has been such a long, drawn-out process. You know, a lot of these people have been denied by FEMA multiple times. They've got caseworkers who are working on their cases, trying to make sure that they get the money they need to rebuild their homes. I mean, meantime, they're waiting for more money to come in. They're hearing about this $422 million, and some of them are kind of at their wits' end, like, well, I don't know. I mean, am I really going to get it? I mean, they're trying to maybe make their own way at this point, but as you also heard, it's a lot of the people who are in the middle, you know, who maybe have great credit, you know, they just were underinsured, like we heard from the McKenzie River Valley. I mean, a lot of the people who've really needed immediate assistance, they've, you know, been getting the trickle down, they've been getting it. There are also people who can afford to just immediately rebuild. They were well insured, but then you've got the people in the middle.
Yeah, that's a tight squeeze. Plus, they're trying to get on with their lives, I'm sure. They've got jobs and all that, and this is just sort of the constant headache that just keeps giving more headache.
Yeah, and you know, there are resources out there. It's just when you have a full life with a family maybe, or you've got a full-time job, it's really hard to navigate these, you know, little things, all this paperwork even. But we'll work on putting some of the resources that are available on our KGW website. You just look for our story.
And I know there's been some progress. You've taken us out to places that are being rebuilt, so that's a little encouraging, right?
Yeah, and you know, with the spring and the summer, you see a lot of green growth, and I think for people who live in some of these places that have suffered and been devastated, that gives a little bit of hope too, like, okay, nature's coming back, you know, okay, we're putting one foot in front of the other. So yeah, I think there is a feeling of hope as well, even though it is a little taxing.
Yeah, and still goes on and on. All right, thank you, Christine. Great stuff as always. We've heard a lot about Asian hate over the past few years, and sadly, the most recent incident occurred just this weekend on Portland's own East Bank Esplanade. Police arrested a man after he allegedly yelled racial slurs, then attacked a father and his 5-year-old daughter as they were simply riding bikes on the waterfront. Here's Kyla Boshi.
The alleged attacker, Dylan Kesterson, appeared in court by phone, never showing his face. The 34-year-old is facing assault and bias crime charges. Police say Kesterson assaulted a 5-year-old girl and her father of Japanese descent after making comments about their race. In an email to KGW, the victim explained he, his wife, and 5-year-old daughter were visiting Portland over the 4th of July holiday weekend. We were riding on a rental 4-wheel bike together on Portland's East Bank Esplanade, explained the victim. A strange white man walked in front of us and yelled anti-Asian slurs before punching the man. He hit my head more than 50 times, explained the victim. His daughter was also punched in the head. She had a helmet on. His wife was not injured. In court Tuesday, the victim said he feared he'd be killed and urged the judge to put Kesterson behind bars. The suspect is currently free released from jail shortly after his arrest.
This is a very horrible experience for us. And he's released. We believe a lot of Japanese on other Asians will be in danger.
A detention hearing is scheduled for Wednesday. A recent report by the Oregon Criminal Justice Commission found anti-Asian incidents in the state increased by almost 200% last year. The victim said he and his family are okay. They returned to their home in California, adding, "Every one of my friends recommended me to visit Portland because it is a good city. But for us, it is hard to visit there anymore."
Kyle Boshi joins us now. Kyle, why is this guy out of jail?
Well, probably the biggest reason is he doesn't have any prior criminal history. There's a release assessment that's done when somebody's booked into jail. In this case, a judge determined him to be low risk. Now, late today, the Multnomah County DA's office put out a statement suggesting that Kesterson will be returned to custody, or at least that's their request, and held without bail. A detention hearing is scheduled for tomorrow.
Yeah, sounds like there's definitely some crossed wires there if he goes from release to held without bail. Hopefully he'll show up for that. And how's the little girl?
She's doing okay. According to her father, she obviously was pretty shaken up. She was scared to actually leave their hotel room and go down to dinner. Now that they're back at home in California, she's doing a little bit better. She got some presents from friends, feels safe in her environment. But obviously, you kind of worry about the long-term impact of something this traumatic.
Oh, yeah, I think we all feel awful for that family. They tried to come to Portland to have fun. You've been exchanging messages with the family. Anything more you can tell us about the father there? What does he make of this whole thing?
Yeah, and we didn't identify him because he's the victim of a crime, but we can tell you he's a doctor from Northern California. And really, he's hurt by all this. He felt like this generation is one of diversity and understanding, and obviously, he just doesn't see that after what happened.
Yeah, kind of hard to see that. All right, thank you, Kyle. Appreciate it. Here's my opinion on all this. It's awful, terrifying, repulsive. It sounds odd to say, but it's one thing to be racist. It's quite another to feel so much anger and so entitled to act out that you actually punch a little girl and her father. And this is not an isolated attack by a homeless person. A different attack, a 29-year-old homeless man attacked and severely beat two elderly men waiting for a bus exactly a week earlier last Saturday. It happened at Southwest 5th and Hall here in Portland. Their offense? They did not engage when the defendant walked up and started talking at them. The defendant apparently flew into a rage and began attacking both men. One of them is 83 years old and uses a cane for balance. The other is 88. According to a court affidavit, the defendant knocked both of them to the ground. The 83-year-old was repeatedly kicked in the head and punched. The 88-year-old was also punched in the face and head multiple times as he tried to get away. Both men ended up in the hospital. When police arrived, the defendant was still right there, sitting at the bus stop. Court records showed the defendant said he'd spent the last 13 years homeless in the Portland area and had concerns about his own mental health. Court documents also showed he'd been charged with violations or misdemeanors or felonies at least 25 times in the last 12 years. Tonight, he's indicted on charges of attempted murder and being held without bail. Why was he even on the street? Why was he able to move freely around our city? This case screams not just for justice, but for prevention. It's widely accepted that the chronically homeless have some sort of mental health issues, often along with addictions. We need to move much more urgently to identify these people ahead of time and get them off the street for their safety and for ours. Now, homeless advocates will tell you most of the people who are unsheltered are not dangerous. Okay, that's probably true. I've talked with many who seem just fine. And mental health advocates will tell you most people with mental issues do not turn violent. Again, no argument there. But there is a small segment of that population that is extremely dangerous and should not be allowed to roam free. There are laws that allow police and others to force someone into an involuntary commitment, a mental health hold. The test that must be met is simple. Are they a threat to themselves or others? Clearly, in the second case, the answer is yes. So why was that person out there? Again, we need to demand fast action from our political leaders. It's fine to talk about building affordable housing in tiny villages and all that. But while we're at it, let's get those with serious mental health issues, those who are dangerous to themselves and others. Let's get them off our streets, and let's do it right now. Well, that's my opinion. What's yours? Do you agree with me? You sure don't have to. You think I'm off base? Let me know. Send an email. The address is thestory@kgw.com or call and leave a voicemail. The phone number is 503-226-5090.
Summer is baseball season, but Portland still does not have a major league team, and the group that's worked for years to bring one to the Rose City has gone quiet. In the meantime, let's dive into the history of how an arson sparked Major League Baseball in Seattle.
You can make the case that the burning of Dugdale Park did change our baseball history for the positive.
When the story continues.
Welcome back. Keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com or give us a call and leave a voicemail, 503-226-5090. Remember the Portland Diamond Project? They're a group backed by the now former Seahawk Russell Wilson that's been trying to bring a Major League Baseball team to Portland for some time. A few years ago, they reached a deal with the Port of Portland to build a stadium at Terminal 2. That's a site in northwest Portland on the Willamette River. Would have been gorgeous. They even released these renderings of a $1 billion stadium, what it would look like. But we've not heard any updates from the group in quite a while. However, sports columnist John Canzano, who has the pulse of so many things, published this little tidbit last weekend on his website. He wrote, "I'm told by sources that the Portland Diamond Project turns its stadium focus to the Portland suburbs. They're a little stalled right now because MLB is crawling toward expansion. The A's stadium situation is dragging out and the leadership in Las Vegas is far more ambitious in trying to attract a team." John goes on to write, "I'm holding out hope, but I feel like we are entering a critical 12 months for the effort. It needs some momentum." So keep an eye on that and see what happens. In the meantime, we can continue going to the Hillsboro Hops baseball games and the Portland Pickles for that matter, or we could watch the Mariners on TV. I grew up in the Seattle area, and I remember it took what seemed like forever for Seattle to get a Major League Baseball team of its own. And here's a fun fact. Baseball historians say it actually all started with an arson set 90 years ago. Here's Jake Garcia.
If I told you the Seattle Mariners were sparked from an actual spark, would you know the story? If I told you the fire of a fan base was rooted in an actual fire, would you know who to thank? You have to go back to 1932 and the 4th of July.
Not a lot of people that I think are aware of it now.
This is Dave Eskenazi, Seattle's unofficial baseball historian.
The further back you go, the more interesting it is, and Dugdale is certainly a major part of our early baseball history.
Dugdale was both a person and a park. Daniel Dugdale, a former pro baseball player from the Midwest, he came to the Northwest in 1898 because of the Klondike Gold Rush, got rich off real estate in Seattle, and built a baseball stadium for the minor league Seattle Indians. A stadium that was both a cathedral.
It was state-of-the-art at the time. It was an all-wooden structure.
And a catastrophe waiting to happen.
On July 4th, 1932, after a doubleheader at the ballpark around midnight, calls started coming in for a fire at the ballpark. Turned out to be a 3-alarm fire that burned it to the ground. They thought it could be an errant cigarette. They thought it could be the fireworks show on the 4th of July that went awry and caused it. They didn't find out until 3 years later that it was actually arson. His name was Robert Bruce Driscoll.
Driscoll targeting America's pastime on America's Day, perhaps because of an unfulfilled American dream.
He felt beaten down by the world. He was unemployed. He was homeless. He slept in boxcars.
He'd confessed to over 140 fires in Seattle, according to records from the fire department, saying he did it because of my destitute circumstances and because I was sore at the world in general.
And Driscoll used some of these discarded programs he found outside the stadium, along with some wood and some kindling to start the fire.
But Driscoll didn't just start a fire. He started a series of events that would lead to Major League Baseball coming to Seattle.
You can make the case that the burning of Dugdale Park did change our baseball history for the positive. Not initially, because the Seattle Indians then had to play their games at Civic Field, which was not even a baseball park, but this led to the team being sold to Emil Sick and the building of Sick Seattle Stadium on the same site as the burned down Dugdale Park. And this was the home of the Seattle Rainiers, who were one of the most successful and popular minor league teams in history.
Their success was leveraged into a consolation prize.
If not for the Seattle Rainiers, perhaps we never would have had the Seattle Pilots, the first major league team in 1969.
And then the ultimate prize,
which led directly to the Seattle Mariners.
One generation's tragedy leading to another generation's triumph.
There's a through line and a thread where if Dugdale Park didn't burn down, we may not have had Major League Baseball.
And so now you know. Still ahead, we'll take a look in the vault at this time just 2 years ago, when the president sent federal troops to Portland. A new book reveals what authors believe was the real goal of that Trump surge. Think back 2 years to the summer of 2020. Do you remember what was happening in downtown Portland on a nightly basis? I certainly do. Let's open the KGW vault. In July of 2020, people had already been protesting for more than a month here following the murder of George Floyd. But President Trump sent federal officers here just after the 4th of July to protect federal buildings downtown. Trump claimed Portland was totally out of control and that the locals just could not handle it. But when the feds arrived, boy, things really got heated in the streets then. I talked with 2 New York Times reporters who recently published a book about Trump. Part of their book discusses how Governor Kate Brown's administration got warnings from some in the White House about the real reason the feds were sent in.
When people in the Brown administration, hearing from people in the Department of Homeland Security, you got to proceed with caution here, because not everybody here, meaning the Trump administration, not everybody here wants to de-escalate this. And that's a really sort of stark warning to get from inside a president's own inner circle, that we seem to be heading towards open conflict between people on the streets of a major American city, federal agents, local and state law enforcement, and the president himself might actually not want to take down the temperature for political purposes.
And certainly that is exactly what happened. When the federal agents came in, things just took off. And then we saw in the news conferences Portland being called out specifically for anarchy and all that.
And that's by design, right? That's not the president sort of mismanaging a situation, unfortunately, with some sort of uncomfortable consequences. No, that's escalation for political purposes.
Exploiting unrest and really sort of tragic events explicitly for his own political gain.
You can read more about that in Jonathan Martin and Alex Burns' book called This Will Not Pass: Trump, Biden, and the Battle for America's Future. All right, keep sending your questions and comments to the story at kgw.com. We've already received a bunch. Keep them coming. Still ahead, how you can help kids who need school supplies this year. A summer tradition is ready to return at KGW. The school supply drive kicks off in August, but we need your help now to get ready. Sign up your organization and we'll send a collection kit so you can help collect school supplies for your school district. Last year, we collected school supplies for more than 15,000 kids. Just go to kgw.com/school for all the details. Well, that's the end of our program. Thanks so much for watching. And remember, the story, our story, well, that never ends. I'll see you tomorrow.
This is KGW News at 6:30.